Hello. As you know, a lot of the visual aids I'm using done either by the Holy Land website and also my colleague Arya Bar has been creating a lot of infographics and a lot of visual aids for me for my colleagues. So I use a lot of his visual aids as well. And just some photographs and blueprints and things you can find in open access. So I would say it's pretty universal here. Once again, the this is what Jerusalem looks like, right? The old city. This layout very well, and the Temple Mount has a very special place. It kind of does not really belong to any of the quarters. It's kind of a separate quarter as it is, but yeah, it's under control of Waqf, the organization that is in charge of all the religious Muslim sites in Jerusalem and Jordan, and it is supported by Jordan. However, the Temple Mount is policed by Israel. And unlike all the other non-Muslim visitors of the Temple Mount, Israeli police can access the Al-Aqsa Mosque or the Dome of the Rock or any other building on the Temple Mount if need be. But other than that, as you know, for non-Muslims, access is restricted, and the access to the Temple Mount for non-Muslims is through the Jewish quarter. The quickest way is through the Dung Gate. We're going to walk, not only are we going to walk on the Temple Mount tonight, but also we're going to walk around the Temple Mount. And this will be kind of a refresher for those, especially for those who had watched my tours long time ago, or it's going to be, I would say, a new bit of information for those who haven't done the tours with me. Okay, so that's the praying plaza. This is the Western Wall. That's blueprint that not the blueprint, that's layout of the old city that I use. It says the Wailing Wall. You know, this is a derogatory term, and it's preferred to say the Western Wall. It has the neutral connotation because the Wailing Wall is definitely a negative connotation. That's what the Christian pilgrims, when they saw Jews in the 19th century finally being able to do pilgrimage as well, crying by the wall, crying and weeping and wailing. That was true. So it was a bit of a mockery there, but we just say it's a Western Wall without any mourning there implied. And that wooden corridor kind of it's the access through the Maghrabi Moroccan gate for non-Muslims. And we are going to be talking about the Western Wall today and also other sections of the Western Wall. This is Lindrit Meyer, who is exactly that source number one. He did all the heavy lifting. He had been exploring, had been studying the Temple Mount for decades. And lots of his excavations, sorry, that's the wrong word, not excavations, the surveys, even though it was made as an assumption, many of these assumptions actually were proven right in the following years. Again, what we see here on the current Temple Mount, we see the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the gilded dome of the rock. Also, we have been able to find out all the previous platforms and the traces of the previous expansions, and they are marked here with different colors. So it's a great deal of help from Holy Land side, that's for sure. And we know that the first temple built by Solomon was way smaller. The platform itself was way smaller, and it's marked in the orange color. In 586 BCE, it was destroyed, and it was built in around 970 BCE. After the destruction, the temple was rebuilt about 70, 80 years later, and it would be standing quite modest one, I would say, much smaller than the Solomon's version, until in the in the first century BCE, Herod significantly enlarged it. There were also some changes in the second century BCE. It's called the Hasmonean expansion, but it was quite negligible compared to what Herod had done. Also, Herod built the Antonia fortress from the northern side. And well, you see Antonia Fortress. So where the Antonia Fortress is the northern side of the Temple Mount. We started all the tours by the western southwestern corner, so to speak, of the we entered through the Moroccan gate that I showed you, and where we started, that place happened to be actually the beginning, the corner, the southwestern corner of the Solomon platform. So you see, it's one highlighted in the red. We were able actually to find all the four corners, and we were able to identify that the three sides of the platform exactly make up 500 cubits, which we spoke about before. I'm not going to go into details here. And only the southern side is a little bit smaller, but I will be able to explain why it's a little bit smaller compared to all the other three sides in dimension. So from the southern side, there is an area called Ophel, and that area is the highest. And there is well, it's not the highest. I mean, it has the most the one of the most steep terrains. You see, it goes like really quite steep down the hill from both sides, the Ophel, and that's why when the builders of Herod the Great were constructing it from the both ends, it was very difficult for them to see each other. So that's why they kind of messed a little, well, a little bit. And well, we know that. And also the same happened before during the Solomon period, right? You see that line in red. That's exactly the end of the platform from the Solomon period, and that was the same case. So even in the first century BCE, Herod's builders messed up a little bit. So we can imagine that say, 1,000 years before that, almost 1,000 years before that, there could have been also a little bit of the incongruity. So we believe it's just a little bit of well, this is just quite negligible numbers. But other than that, all the three sides, as it is mentioned in the Mishnah, yes, they exactly measured the same 500 royal cubits, and that's quite impressive. So we know that Herod, when he expanded the Temple Mount, he had to build those archways to the southern side, because this is when it gets down the hill. And those arches were discovered under the Al-Aqsa Mosque, when Al-Aqsa Mosque was under restoration after the earthquake in the 1920s. So a lot of the archaeology from Herodian times, architecture from the Herodian times, is still there. But because excavations are not allowed, um, well, we don't see that, and we don't know much, but there are photographs. Now, I also mentioned that there are still some historians, but not licensed archaeologists, however, and they're mostly the historians and archaeologists from outside of Israel who never really participated in any excavations and surveys. There are still people who claim that no, the temple was not built on the Temple Mount, but it was built in the city of David. So what are you looking at is, well, in the upper part of the frame, you see the Temple Mount, obviously, and you see even the Ophel, that area behind, already after the wall. And we are looking, you see that the terrain goes down the hill. And let me just remind you, we have already done tours of the city of David, but so I think now it's a bit easier to understand. So the blue color is the Temple Mount. The green color is the area called Ophel, and we are going to explore it a little bit, especially the left side of the Ophel, and the red is the city of David. So some people still think, I don't want even to call them specialists. In a way, they are specialists, but this theory doesn't really hold the water. However, yes, you may have come across a theory that the temple actually had been built in the city of David, because the city of David is the oldest part of Jerusalem. It's way older than the old city of Jerusalem that we know today. That old city of Jerusalem, that the layout of which I showed you like 5 minutes ago. However, there was no way that the city of David, which is very narrow and also located actually on quite uneven terrain, it also goes down the hill. Well, there's no place for the temple. So the temple wasn't even built by David. As you know, the temple was built by Solomon. But we will be talking about it also later on. So I think this is the good way to understand what is the relation between the city of David and the Temple Mount. Uh, well, okay, yes, what we see nowadays is well, twice as big. The Temple Mount now is twice as big than it was during the times of Solomon. But even so, there is no way it could have fitted the temple in the city of David. And that area marked with the blue color on the red, it's the supposed, well, the alleged place where the temple could have been built. Well, that's just doesn't make any sense. And not even the temple, but the altar. Well, no, there's just no way. This theory just doesn't hold the water. But this theory is still there, so okay, so be it. Now, another infographic shows you what it looked like from the north, from the Temple Mount. You see how steep it goes down the hill. And we have walked this area. We've walked all around the walls of the old city from the outside. And we know that, yeah, it's quite steep. It goes really downhill. And you saw the road and everything. So I think it also kind of has it's a good way to see what it was like, and also you see the Temple Mount itself, what the temple looked like, what the courts were there. We're going to talk more about the courts itself, but there were also many other uh, buildings that preceded the Temple Mount, right? There was we did together the tours of the Western Wall tunnels. We did the tours of the Pilgrimage Road. And that area especially during the three main pilgrimage festivals, was filled with hundreds of thousands of people. Millions of Jews from all over the world um, had to make the pilgrimage for the festivals. So for the Passover, for Shavuot, and it's I would say, well, Pesach, by the way, was exactly that festival for which Jesus also came from Galilee, from the north of Israel, right? So that was one of those important pilgrimage festivals. Okay, let's move on. We're going to talk about, well, this is just one of the renderings. We do not know exactly what the temple looked like, especially the first one, but we have certain understanding, we have certain descriptions, but there are no, I would say there are no images that were left, and no paintings or whatsoever. So all the paintings, all the renderings were made way later. This is also kind of a mapping of the relation between the expansions. And you may remember that the modern platform of the Temple Mount, where the Dome of the Rock is not really the sides are not really parallel to the wall, to the eastern wall. Right, the eastern wall is the one to the right, right? That's the eastern wall. It's not really parallel. And this is the sign that that's not really the original um, original side of the platform. We will be talking about it later on as well. I found also better photographs that will add to the description. So during the times of David, right? So when David came, let's say in year 1000 BCE, The Jerusalem had already been quite a big city, located exactly where the city of David later on would be built, and it was inhabited by the Canaanite peoples, the pagan tribes. David came, conquered, but he did not push away. He did not drown the city in blood of the Jebusites. No, the Jebusites actually it is also mentioned in the in the Old Testament that the Jebusites continued living with alongside the Jews in the city of David. And Jebusites are actually quite important for the following development of the story. But Mount Moriah at that point was still empty. There was nothing there. There were parts of the bedrock standing out, right? But other than that, it was not inhabited. So the inhabited was the city of David. That's part of the area down the hill that was marked with the red color in one of the schemes that I showed you a couple of minutes ago. That's what it looked. So the more the merrier, you see. So later on, as you know, David, who had the tabernacle, uh, who had the Ark of the Covenant, right, with the tablets, with the stone tablets that Moses got from the Sinai. So we talked about it on the tours of the city of David that there has been found a potential site where the palace of David had been built and where the Ark of the Covenant and the tabernacle must have been stored. Yes, we know that David kept the tabernacle in his courtyard, but David did not build the temple. David still was a warrior. He had killed too many people because he was the warrior. So he could not, he wasn't good enough for that. So only his son built the temple, but later on. And we also know that to build the temple, it is also mentioned in the Holy Scripture that they had to go up the hill to build the temple. Up the hill, not down the hill. There's no place. No, no, but up the hill. So that's exactly where the northwards up the hill, the temple will be built on Mount Moriah. Well, the original temple was very modest compared to the one we see today. As I said, well, it was glorious for that time, but obviously it's incomparable to what it looked like during times of Herod the Great. But yes, it basically was the platform built, well, on top of the Mount Moriah, and the heart of it, the altar, was exactly that area where the bedrock jutted out and showed up from the surface. That was it. We'll talk about the Dome of the Rock. We will talk about the Mount Moriah later on, and that's exactly where now the Muslim platform is. And well, I really like this image. I mean, it's not very crispy, but you get the idea. So you see that outline. So the Muslim platform, the current Muslim platform, as I said, it's not parallel to the actual walls of the Temple Mount. And this is the sign for us that it is something from later period. We were able to, well, not, it wasn't me, it wasn't actually us, but archaeologists, Lindwit Mayer, first and foremost, was able to identify the actual corner of the Solomon platform, northwest corner. He was able to find it, and we talked about it. So I'm going to only briefly go in around about it. And that part where exactly that corner that was identified, there are the steps. There still are visible the stones from the first temple period. And those stones are absolutely parallel to the eastern wall. They are absolutely aligned with the eastern wall, the one that is marked in the orange color. So the modern day newer Muslim platform alignment is in yellow. Sorry, is in red. And we also have the northern step alignment in yellow. That's the original one. That's the old one from the first temple period. There you go. So you see the Muslim platform angle doesn't align. Those steps, the one that were marked with the yellow color, so we got them here. So this is exactly those stones that come from the first temple period. You see it kind of very different in their structure, in the way they look, and there you go. You see them now. This is one of the thousands of photos that I took. I didn't really have a good video of that part in particular, but well, I have some photos. So you see that the steps from the right hand side are very different from just one row of stones. So those steps are way more modern, and they were built during the Muslim period. And that thick, wide row of stones, Linwood Mayer and his colleagues were able to identify as the first temple period stones. And how do we know that? Because of this famous word boss, which is basically a masonry mark. You cannot see it nowadays because these modern tiles from the right hand side were added some 20, 30 years ago. I'm not sure, but when Lidwith Meyer was there, these tiles were not there. So you can clearly see these are the modern tiles from the right side from this line of stones, and he saw the boss. So what is the boss? The outline, right? It's kind of a special outline and also different masonry marks that also contribute, add to the way a stone looks, and also contain different elements, that basically ensure how stones can be fitted to one another during construction and also lifted and transported. Well, I think you see the difference between the stones. So the one in the center, that line of stones in the center, it looks older. And from the left hand side, you see the during the this well, when this photograph was taken, that's 1960s and 70s. So you see there was no these modern tiles, and that outline that kind of stood out a little bit. So that was said it all to Linrid Meyer. What can I say? But again, now we don't see it, so we only have to rely to what Lindrit Mayer has to provide for us. And I showed you this image before. So here, as I said, in Jerusalem, and basically everywhere in the world, stones can tell us so many stories. Yes, we cannot do carbon 14 dating analysis because there is no organics in the stones. I mean, but there is also organics, but there is some organics sometimes in between the stones. But since we cannot excavate, there's not much we can do with regards to the carbon 14 analysis. But the boss tells the story and does the part. So that's not so bad. It could have been way worse, right? Way worse. Now, let me show you this scheme. This model of Jerusalem. Um, it's in the Davidson Center. It's in the archaeological park that stretches from the corner of the western wall and the southern wall. I did some pre-recorded tours there for you about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago. And and that tour is very much connected to the archaeology of the Temple Mount itself. So what we're looking at nowadays is exactly so we are standing kind of we're standing on the southern side, and from the south we are overlooking the Temple Mount. So this is the one of the visual aids provided by my colleague Arya Bar. Remember, we started the tour with the view of the praying plaza, the western wall. So you see that section marked in red. This is exactly the western wall territory exposed today. There is a massive layer of stones under it. So this is the section that is visible in the western wall tunnels, which we also had already explored together. And all the area to the right had not been excavated up until actually the well 1960, well, 1968 and onwards. So, as you know, the Jewish Quarter, the Western Wall Plaza, and also uh, the western and the southern side of the Temple Mount, they were all excavated after the 1967 war, when the Jordanian presence and occupation of Jerusalem and the Jewish Quarter, whichever word you use. I only want to say that after that war, the state of Israel was able to actually carry out excavation, and there are a lot of amazing discoveries that were made. But what we're looking at nowadays, well, this is uh, the way it looked before the destruction of the Second Temple. It's still during the times of the Second Temple, still standing. And what we're looking at is the corner of the south, of the western and the south walls. We're going to walk there. We're going to explore it just for a little bit. And so you see the levels of the floor in the past and in today, right? You see it today and how much there's still heated underground. So to see what else we have underground, that's clearly the Western Wall tunnels. We saw quite a lot. And also you see in this image, in the right hand side, like behind that wall, you see the arches. Those are exactly the Herodian arches, which were exposed during 1920-1930 repair works of the Al-Aqsa Mosque. So it was provided by it was all proved by those excavations, which were not archaeological. Now we are actually approaching the corner of the south, of the western and the southern walls. There are tons of stones, and you can see that those stones will be different from the stones you will see on the Temple Mount, and they will be different from the stones you see to the right hand side even. So each stone has its own boss, has its own outline and its own masonry marks. Have a look at these. So have a look at these stones, very regular, with a clear cut frame, clear cut boss, and also they are put so close to one another. You cannot even put the plastic card in between the stones. I haven't tried it. I don't think it's okay to do that. I mean, unless there are some cracks, right? But just in general, if you just try to put kind of slide in, it's not gonna work. So this is the good Roman period architecture here, Herodian times. So the Herodian stones, anyone can differentiate easily. So what are we looking at? We're looking at the pile of stones and piles of stones and all these cracks in the floor. So that's the area that had been covered with a thick layer of soil, and it was completely covered underground up until 1967, right? So we saw that area. We saw the visual aids as of the Second Temple period. So that's the area exactly underground, and it's the past, the level of the floor from the past. So we're looking at the road, which was one of the central roads, like basically the the avenue, yeah, kind of the main avenue of Jerusalem that went past the Temple Mount. And that's exactly the road from the first century BCE and first century Common Era. And that's exactly the road that Jesus himself also walked multiple times. And you see the cracks, right? You see the damage. Well, and the damage came from those stones. And those stones used to be on the top of the Temple Mount. And those stones collapsed when in the year 70 AD, the temple was destroyed by the Romans. Now, um, remember the outline of the Solomon Temple platform, right? That side with the northwestern corner. So I just put it here, you see? So that's that side. that line. So that's these that steps aligns with the eastern wall. Just leaving it here for our understanding. Again, it's all Liebrit Mayer. It's only him. Without this, I'm not even sure what the situation around the Temple Mount would have been. So for a minute, let's forget the southwestern wall. I just wanted you to see what it looks like, right? What it looks like uh, after the Western Wall, outside of the Western Wall now. So we have defined that corner, the northern corner. And from there, so it aligns with the Eastern Wall, and also it makes exactly 500 cubits from there to the Eastern Wall, where we believe exactly uh, the Solomon platform started. Now, how do we know? Do we know that there actually used to be a wall? Yes, we know because we know that there were found a lot of cisterns. There are a lot of cisterns. So the underground of the Temple Mount is quite complex. There were found a lot of cisterns. They're basically the water reservoirs because Jerusalem needed millions of tons of, well, millions of liters of water, like uh, for all the purposes. Drinking water and also all this purification water. A lot of water was needed. So there are a lot of cisterns that were discovered. There's no access to them, but well, we know they're there according to, well, thanks to a lot of descriptions, thanks to a lot of explorations given in the 19th century. And you see there is like the rock scarp, the System 29. So the System 29 has the has its wall exactly, well, where the Solomon platform wall ran. You see that red line, rock scrap. Well, scarp, that's exactly it. Again, well, we're not going into details with regards to the cisterns, well, because it's just not going to make a lot of sense, but it's just for us to know that the Western Wall had a lot of water, enough of water. So that's what it looks like from the from above. So the northern wall, the corner of it we have identified, and it goes up to the eastern wall, and it matches exactly the part where little offset in the wall begins. So, and that's how we know that yes, this is where the eastern wall started, the platform during the Solomon times. There you go. You have it. Now, so that's what it looks like from the outside, from the eastern side. Again, yeah, so we have spoken about it before, but again, I have been asked to just do a recap of everything, and I'm adding also a lot of info to what we have discussed before. Plus, we're also looking at how things are from the outside of the Temple Mount. So that offset in the wall is believed where the gate, a tower used to be, because it's historically that from the north, Jerusalem was always weaker because of the terrain. And most enemies, most um, invasions and annexations were actually done from the north. That's what the Mamluks did. That's what the Crusaders did. They all invaded the Jerusalem, the old city of Jerusalem, and from the north. So that's why the tower was absolutely essential from the north. That's exactly why Herod also built Antonia fortress from the north, because from the north Jerusalem was the weakest. And we also know that there are found Solomon stones. Well, the first temple period stones. It doesn't necessarily have to be just the Solomon stone, but the first temple period stones were found, are seen even now in the eastern wall. We, well, we see them. They're all marked here. I also found this very good infographics again from from one of the books by Leavitt Meyer. It's digitized, so you can find it online as well. And you can see here that everything that is that has no color, that's black and white, that's what we see above the surface, and everything in color, this is already underground, right? And uh, so it's how shall I put it? You see the five. You see it's written there, tower, 500 cubic square amount, right? So that's the tower. So and that's where the offset is. And yes, that's exactly what we were talking about. That's the beginning of the Solomon period uh, platform, and the rest from the right is the extension from the Herodian times, including the Antonia fortress from the north. So you can see it now, right? There you go. We're just focusing on the eastern side here, just that. Also in the left, now we're going towards the south. We can see it's also marked the band in the wall, 500 square cubit. That's where the band in the wall is. We believe that's the end of the Solomon platform. And then the Hasmonean extension, right, with a with a seam that is visible from the outside to the naked eye, and then Herodian extension from the south. We spoke about the royal stoa. We spoke that last time that the royal stoa is believed to be the place where, um, hold on, where the Pentecost took place later on, because that's the area that could fit uh, potentially thousands of people. Well, like it's mentioned, 3,000 people, but that was a really massive area. These are the stones from the Solomon period, right? From the first temple period, we can see them from the eastern side. And what's important, the Golden Gate is in the eastern side, and in the Golden Gate, which were the most important gates, those were the gates through which also Messiah was supposed to enter, is supposed to enter the Temple Mount. So there, the gate and the original stones from the first temple period, that is the Iron Age, were actually found, and they are there. The stones are there, and they were visible from the inside. Right now, the Golden Gate or the Eastern Gate, they are not accessible. They're sealed, and also the Muslims place the synagogue there. There is a synagogue, so there's no entrance to non-Muslims at the moment to all the sites. So you cannot go anywhere inside. But the posts, they were made photographs. And last time I showed you photographs of the post, but I found better ones. So this is actually Lynn Wittmeyer standing there, and these are exactly the two posts that are related to. Um, well, this is exactly the post from the Herodian times. Okay, move on. There you go. The gate post. That's just one more visual aid for us. Golden Gate or Eastern Gate, it doesn't matter. There's also another name, the Shushan Gate. Again, that's not that relevant. What is relevant is that there is still the masonry. There are stones from the first temple period and the columns from the Herodian period. So the columns, right? So columns, the ones that Herod the Great built to extend the platform. We also know that Herod built this ramp. The ramp wasn't there during Solomon times, and um, the outline, the columns, the stones from that time are still a little bit visible, and they are also still there, and also underground, must be underground, but that we don't know for sure because there are not so much excavations there because of the cemetery. There is a Muslim cemetery, as you know. So that's the bend on the wall we were talking about, the early stones in the Temple Mount. You see that in the eastern wall, and we see the Hasmonean stones, the extension from the 2nd century BCE, and the seam under letter M. That's the seam that shows the border between the 2nd century BCE extension and the Herodian. You can see that now. I think very easily. And this is how, well, and exactly at that corner begins the southern wall at the territory called Ophel. So you see the southern wall is a little bit smaller. It's a little bit, well, there's this different discrepancy for of five cubits, which is really not that significant. Now, we spoke about the Barclay Gate, right? We spoke about it. The Barclay Gate was built, well, it's named after an archaeologist who noticed what was left of that gate from Herodian times. And we know that the gate was built during Herodian times, and it was built exactly attached to the Hasmonean extension. That's how we were able to identify the uh, southwestern point of the Temple Mount platform. The Barclay Gate is still a little bit visible, especially, well, we spoke about it before, so I'm not going into details, but especially from the Western Wall Plaza in the women's section, you can still see a little bit of it, but we're not going there at the moment. We are not. And exactly from the southwest corner where the Barclay Gate used to be, we are now kind of rounded it up. And from there, the straight line, 500 cubit to the northwest corner, where we saw that those stones that were aligned with the eastern wall, not with the Muslim platform. So we've kind of completed this circle. And now we can talk more about the Temple Mount platform itself, the Al-Aqsa, oh sorry, the Dome of the Rock. And we walked around it. We spoke about the Pentecost. We spoke about the Royal Store. We spoke about all of this. Well, this is a very extended tour. So normally tourists do not really walk this much there. So let's just get to the main point. That is the Al-Aqsa Mosque, right? We spoke about, sorry, the Dome of the Rock, and the Dome of the Rock is standing above the rock, above the bedrock of Mount Moriah, right? We remember that. We spoke about it, and I promised to talk more. There are photographs and there are different etchings, there are different marks on the bedrock, and those marks are clearly artificial. They were somehow etched or something hewn, and the Linvet Mayer believes that those marks, especially several of them, they are the possible site, the most possible site of where the Ark of the Covenant was actually placed. Well, some more information here. So that's what it looks like from kind of, if you look at it from a distance, have a for a bigger picture. So exactly in the center of the dome is the bedrock, and the indentations they coincide with the Ark of the Covenant, and they believe to be the place of where the Holy of Holies was placed. The Ark of the Covenant, the Holy of Holies, right? There you go. So this is also something that we have from the Holy Land side. And also the altar. So there was an altar, and there was the Holy of Holies with the Ark of the Covenant in it. And the altar, there are several versions of it where the altar could have been, but the most, I would say, supported version actually goes to, well, not goes to, but the most uh, plausible version, the most reliable version is that the altar actually coincides with the dome of chain uh, next to the dome of the rock. And that's exactly where we are now standing, right? That's the smaller dome is the uh, the dome of the chain, and the altar. So it's either exactly on the spot of the dome of the chain, or a little bit closer to the edge of the Muslim platform. So in that side, there were given dimensions. There were dimensions of where there was a clear-cut instruction that was given by God where the certain areas of the temple and the Holy of Holies were supposed to be. Well, uh, now again, that's the Jerusalem, the city of David, and the Temple Mount. You see that, and you see the indentation. So you see the indentation on Mount Moriah. Supposedly, that's exactly where the binding of Isaac took place. And there's another indentation where the altar was. Well, most plausible side. So the Holy of Holies, right? So we already know what. So the Holy of Holies was placed exactly on that part where the binding of Isaac took place. But what is the threshing floor? So we need to go back to the times of of King David, because in fact the site for the future temple was purchased by David. So David, shortly before the all the events that I'm speaking about now, it's mentioned in the second book of Samuel that David carried out a census, and censuses were held to first and foremost understand how many warriors were there in the city, and that was how David wanted to understand how strong he is, and that symbolized him going against God, showing his distrust in God, because God told him he was strong, right? But David wanted to double check. And because he doubted what God told him, God punished him. And this is how plague started, that killed a lot of people. So this is when the prophet came to David, God, the prophet God, and told him to buy a threshing floor from the Jebusites and to build the altar there to please God. And so that threshing floor was not far from would not be not far from the Holy of Holies. And that threshing floor eventually became the altar. There are a lot of questions asking, well, that probably one can ask. Why buying? Who were the Jebusites again? Why did it matter? So, okay. Um, why did David had to buy it from Jebusites? He was a king. He could just take it. And the Jebusites, in fact, the landowner, because every plot of land belonged to someone. The landowner, the Jebusites or the Canaanites, the one of the representative of the Canaanites people, he offered to give it to David. He could give it to him. David was the king, but David said, "No, I don't want to take it by force. I want to legally buy it. So I'm kind of giving the sacrifice. I'm giving the money for it." So it was meant. It had to become something that David paid for, because he had to also pay for his sins in a way. There is a lot of deep meaning into this. I'm not going into details, but so buying that threshing floor was absolutely a must. It was absolutely mandatory. And eventually, so we know that the burden of Isaac that was supposed to be when well, the sacrifice of the most important thing you have in life, right? So Abraham sacrificing his own son, was ready to sacrifice his own son for God. That was again the story of the sacrifice, giving the precious you have for that, right? Because God asks you to. And then you know that instead of Isaac, it was the lamb, and this is how well. This is exactly when this tradition of bringing sacrifice in the temple, the sacrifice to God actually started. And when the temple would be built, well, this would begin in full force and would be carried out up until the end of the Second Temple period. That's the story. Yeah. Okay, we have more of the information and the works by Lynn Whitmire. Um, I know it's very nerdy. What can I say? And here we see what else used to be there. Uh, um, okay, and you see all the different courts, right? So we haven't really discussed in details yet, like what used to be there on the Temple Mount before the Dome of the Rock and before the Byzantine period. So before the destruction of the temple, we spoke briefly about those times, but we didn't really discuss in details what what the courts were like. And I would like just to point out a few things here. You see different courts, right? You see the court of the Israelites, you see the court of the priests. So these are already the area only where the Jews could enter. But there were also other courts, and they were even the court of the Gentiles, because that was the center of everything. Mount Moriah, and that was the center of everything. And Jews were very well aware that there were also a lot of Gentiles, and the Gentiles lived with them. Again, as I said, it wasn't exclusively just the Israelites, right? Just the Jews living there. So even the Goyas, right? Even the Gentiles could access the Temple Mount, but there was a limit to where they could go. But even they could have a little bit of the glory of God on the Temple Mount. So that's also something quite remarkable. This is a very, I would say, most typical rendering of what the Herodian temple looked like. So you see the central part, right? So the Holy of Holies, where now with the Ark of the Covenant, that's exactly above which the Dome of the Rock is standing. Now, different courts all around. You see the court of the Gentiles. You see, well, the royal store, we spoke about it. And then there would be already the smaller court where the Jews could enter. There was a beautiful gate. There was a court for women. There were also the men's section. But through the other gate to the Holy of Holies, only, well, no one could enter, but the Kohanim, right? So the Kohens, only the priests, and only for, so in the Holy of Holies, only one day in a year that a Kohen, a priest, could go to Yom Kippur. That was it. So I'm not going into details here. Again, it's not the tour about how it all functioned. Also, from the northern side, and that's important, you also can see the court of the Gentiles. Why is it important? Because we need to go back to the times of Jesus, right? Because we also need to, well, my focus is also not only on the Jewish narrative but also on the Christian narrative. That's because that's exactly how things were, right? We're talking about the historical events that took place there, and we also need to see where there was actually the correlation between the actual history and also and archaeology, architecture, and the scripture. So there's a lot of extra biblical context here. And from the northern side of the Temple Mount, we also know there was the Antonia Fortress. Antonia Fortress and the access to the Temple Mount was obviously granted to Gentiles, to the Romans, right? So that's only natural that from the northern side there would also be the court for the Gentiles. And that's if we assume that Jesus was taken for to Praetorium, and well, we know that Jesus was taken to Praetorium, right, for the judgment by Pontius Pilate. It's not mentioned where exactly this Praetorium was, but one of the versions that it was in the Antonia Fortress, which is, it's not here, it's outside of the scope of the frame, but it's from the court of the Gentiles from the right hand side. altar. So now you see the altar and its relation to the Holy of Holies, right? It's already behind the gate, so only the priest could enter that area through the gate. And so now you can see that. Again, it's just the entering. So it's either the altar, it's either the dome of shade, or a little bit to the side from it. That's something that's really that much matters. Now the view from the Eastern Gate, and this is where we are going to wrap this up for today. The Golden Gate, right, with the ramp that was built by Herod, so you could enter, and then from there there was a lot of space. So now you can see how actually big that area was. And now, if we look at this from this side, we can see also how big, how massive the royal store was. That section covered the section with the columns from the right, from the southern side. So you can actually see that that area could feed thousands of people. So the story of the Pentecost with 3,000 people, that's, well, it makes sense. And this looks like the most plausible site for the Pentecost. Okay, let's wrap it up here. I promise next time we're going to wrap up with the Temple Mount and with the area around the Temple Mount. I'm going to cover a little bit more of the area called Ophel because of the some interesting excavations that are still ongoing there and a lot of findings that I have not been able to talk about before. And this will only add up to our understanding of the life of the Temple Mount and around it, and that archaeology, the actual excavations of that area now down the hill uh, from the south of the Royal Stoa, I think it will only add to our understanding of how things used to be. Okay, the chat is open. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'm sure you have. Well, you should have questions. Again, as I said, this has been an overview plus a lot of extra information and visual aid. I have been asked to provide this overview by a couple of new viewers as well. And I think, well, with this kind of a summary, it's now going to be easier for us to go outside of the walls of the Temple Mount. And then we're going to explore a bit of the Muslim Quarter. And then we're going to explore the area outside of the old city and mainly the Damascus Road with a lot of 19th century sites, religious sites, Christian sites. There are lots of beautiful, gorgeous 19th century and early 20th century churches, and I filmed them all this summer when I was in Israel, and I can't wait to share it with you. I can't wait to share it with you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Lena. Um, I came in very late. Will you have the time to put today's tours on YouTube by tomorrow evening, please? Yeah, that was my plan to do it somehow around these days. So hopefully yeah, by tomorrow evening that should be all there on YouTube. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sharon. So Mary says, Anna, thank you for all the great summary of so much information. As always, you bring things to life. I was worried that it's too much information. Plus, yes, we have spoken about some of these things before, but again, I think it's just impossible to keep it all in mind for 1 week. Plus, it's been a festive week for many of us. So, yes. Thank you, Dorley. Anna, thanks for an interesting weekend. I like the way you tell stories. You're talented. Oh, thank you so much. This was a lot. Cindy, I know. And it was only like 8 minutes of the video that I have prepared for today. Yes, I know. And I'm not even going into details, right? I'm just basically mentioning things, scratching the surface. Well, in a way, in some things I'm talking about in detail, some things I'm just kind of giving a little bit of the general information. Thank you so much. Thank you. It's very kind of you. Thank you all the kind words, and thank you for being so attentive and having and thank you for putting also so much effort in trying to understand this, comprehend this. This is not easy, honestly. It gave me so many sleepless nights. Just imagine learning all this along other 5,000 years of history to get my license. And now you're helping me not, well, you're helping me not to forget this. I have to go on your side and see the others. Have seen just two of this topic. Have to get on your side and yes. Well, Lena, how to tip all that's very easy. And also there are all the other links. I'm going to provide them now. Thank you so much for reminding me. So it's super easy. I'm sharing the links. The next episode, which is going to be the last episode of the Temple Mount, as it is, with also little areas around it. It's over here. Also other tours, because as you know, I happen to be also a tour guide to St. Petersburg, and also guide around Tbilisi, Georgia, where I'm currently staying. So a lot of things, a lot of tours, diverse tours. Plus, in January, I'm going to Israel again, and I'm planning to do some live stream tours there and pre-recorded ones. I'm going to record a few more things that still haven't recorded yet. So yeah, there's going to be a lot. Marilyn, hi dear. So glad you summarized so much because it brings back into next more of the input on my mind. Marilyn, repetition is the mother of learning. I'm also convinced. And for every tour, I have to go over it myself, even. So I, I'm very much aware that it is something that needs a lot of comprehension and repetition, which is fine. You don't need to keep it all in mind. So thank you so much everyone for joining me. So Len, I hope this has been useful and please feel free to contact me and I will explain how you can get access to all the other tours of Jerusalem and the around the Temple Mount, the Western Wall tunnels and the city of David. There are hours and hours of tours, and I made sure I made them very detailed, normally even more detailed than they are actually given on the site because there's always some time limit, there's always a program, there's always something else you need to make sure you see before a certain place closes. So, yes, here I'm kind of really abusing the time and enjoying it to the fullest, I would say. Normally, when I guide on site, my tours are never really that detailed because it's just impossible. It's just 1 hour. Imagine that it's a 10-hour tour, 8-hour tour, the whole day. So no, I'm normally not that nerdy and not that nitty gritty about these things. But thank you so much. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Holy Land site, for all the infographics because I do not have the funds. I don't have the budget and time for all that. Sorry, Lena, I don't understand the question. I have the website. Yes, I have just, thank you, Marilyn. I like nerdy, but there has to be a limit to it. I have shared all the information and I have the website. It's honoryourguide.com. I'm going to leave these links here just once again. And I have the YouTube channel. And through my website, you can also access the recordings as of the previous weekend. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for your interest in my tours. Thank you for liking the nerdy. I like it too. And yeah, I will see you next weekend. There are gonna be a few more tours added for sure. Ooh, and well, there are lots of plans. Wow, there's so much I still want to show you about Jerusalem and the museums. Yes, so I'm gonna get down to the tour recordings to process them and share them on my YouTube channel. And if you subscribe to my channel, I'm sure you're gonna get notified. Well, and you won't miss a thing. Thank you, everyone, and bye bye. And thank you, Lena, for being here and your interest in the tours. Bye bye. And yeah, with regards to the tipping, it can be either PayPal, it can be buy me a coffee, whichever is convenient. Doesn't really matter much. Thank you. Bye bye.